Hello and welcome to this episode of the Reset Podcast. I'm your host, Laura Munoz, CEO of the experience agency D Flash. Each week I bring on a different innovative business leader who's doing some game-changing work. As we're in this unique time of the pandemic, using smart productivity tools is going to be key for your own sanity and navigating our increasingly very busy world. And that's why I'm so excited to have Nash Ahmed, who's the CEO and founder of Undock, a super innovative platform for someone like me who's obsessed with their calendar. It's going to be a great conversation. Take a listen. Hey, Nash.
Hey, Laura, thanks for having me on the program.
Sure thing. Psyched to have you on. As we now are in, month 1000 of the pandemic, it's good to find, it's afforded me an awesome opportunity to meet some really unique founders and business leaders. And so I was super excited when I got to see your platform and psyched to have a chat with you today. And the platform and the podcast doesn't change either. And the first question always stays the same. So, Nash, what was your first job?
My first job was a paper boy, if we want to be technical. I was 12 years old and I was delivering the Trenton Times in my apartment complex. I think I did that for about a year and a half. That was my first job.
Wow, an actual paperboy. People actually still had those jobs?
So let me explain to the audience. So a newspaper was like this thing that folded, and then people would bring. It's like a news feed that people brought to your house. So like your Facebook was brought to your house. That's what a newspaper was. Yeah,
but it didn't update in real time. That's
no. You had to have it brought to your house every single day by a young gentleman or a lady like me or someone else, and then they would come back to your house once a week, and then you would give them money. So, yeah, it was a good job. It taught responsibility. It probably started my early morning habits because you had to get up before school, and if it was not in the summertime, you still had to get up pretty early, like 6 a.m. to go out and deliver the paper. So, my paper boy manager, his name was Tom. He would show up and he would drop off a big bundle of papers, and then I would have to take them. I'd fold them all, or wrap them up. If it was raining, you had to put them in a bag, and then I'd walk or ride my bike around the apartment complex, delivering newspapers one by one. Take about 30 to 45 minutes for delivery.
And what city was this in?
This was in West Trenton, New Jersey, which is where I spent probably 5 years of my life.
Got it. So you'll always be a Jersey guy, no matter what.
I just moved to New York about 11 months ago. And other than before I was born in Nigeria, and I came here when I was between 1 and 2. And I've lived in New Jersey my entire life. And this is quite the transition to move into New York during a pandemic.
I was going to say, like, of all the time to live in New York, great move. New York's is a little bit different right now, but it's okay. It's like we're New York tough, and we'll be fine.
Yes, I've enjoyed it mainly because it has allowed me to become a hermit and not hear about it from anyone.
Yeah, you're like, I'm good. We're good here.
Yeah.
So to go from paperboy to hermit / CEO and founder, what was that journey like?
It's interesting. I think around 15 or 16 is when I decided that I wanted to be a quote unquote business person. There was no idea of like startup founder or something to myself in the mid to late 90s. I was just like, I'm going to be a business person. I'm going to have a business. I had no idea what the business was going to be. I don't even think I had any idea what it meant to be a businessman or, owning your own business, other than my father owning a couple convenience stores for very, very small periods of time. I think he had one for like a year and then another one for like a year and change. But I'm like, okay, so you can like come to this country and build your own business and, not have to work the 9 to 5 schlub. So I think I had a very early introduction to it, and it was decided very early on that I was going to run my own business. I've had very few like jobs. I worked in a podiatrist office in high school for a couple of years. I worked at McDonald's for 3 years in high school, and I think after that, I had one office job for about 6 months, and then I joined another company in 2010, uh, and I was an employee for about 6 months before I became an executive, and then eventually owner. Along that trip, there was a bunch of entrepreneurial ventures, including like real estate, design, web development. Um, I had my own daycare, uh, my own music
Okay,
production company.
of course.
Yeah, so all of those things were like, hey, you definitely want to run something, but you're not sure what. And I got some clarity on that later, but I don't know how far back you want me to stick with the storyline right now.
All right, so daycare center, music production, then tech startup.
Um, in order, it was I graduated with a computer science degree, and I went straight into music production because, of course,
Of
uh,
course.
so I had a music production. We actually did pretty well. I worked with some uh, well-known artists and made a little bit of money doing that. And I went back to get my MBA in 2009, and I said, I'm very, very young. I think at that time I was 25 or 26. And I was like, I don't have much office or corporate experience. I should probably go get some office or corporate experience. So this MBA actually means something. So I took what I thought was going to be a 1 semester break from my MBA to just go get a job. And I said, I'm going to apply. So I'm literally, I was, and I still am, averse to working for anyone unless I think they have either this incredible mind or incredible work ethic. One of the two things. If you aren't completely shredding in one of those veins, then I just can't fathom working for someone. Um, so I said I'm going to take the first job I apply to that accepts me, because what I was doing prior to then is I'd get a job interview, and then I get offered the job, and I say I don't want it. I'm not interested in this job, this position,
Wow.
company, multiple times. So I don't know if my path would have went the way it went if I didn't literally say to myself, you have to accept the first job you're offered, and you're going to apply to anything that's tangentially related to what you like, which was either technology or marketing or design, right? And I applied for a marketing assistant position at a telecommunications company. I was like, oh, that's marketing and tech. And I was offered the job after the interview. And I just said, okay, fine, I'll take it. It wasn't paying very much money, it wasn't all that interesting. And I wrote a plan out for myself. I think it was a 3 year plan at that time. And I said, okay, I'm going to stick at this job for 3 to 6 months. And then I'm going to go back to my MBA coursework. And while I'm in my MBA coursework, I'm going to try to find a much better job more closely related to what I'm trying to do in the future. And then I like mapped out like, okay, I want to be at this level of an executive in 3 years. So aligned with graduating from my MBA and my obvious career progression. But it's something I was doing begrudgingly. I'm like, all right, you're going to do this for 3 years. You're going to be an employee. You're going to do it. And then you go start your own thing after that. But what ended up happening is I, it's very serendipitous, depending on how you look at it. But I was literally planning to go into my boss's office after the third month and say that I'm going to be leaving within the next month. And either the day of or the day before, I can't recall, she sent me an email saying that I could see you being an executive in this company. I'm like, oh, okay. Executive in this company. There's 3 people here. That's not that enticing. However, there's an opportunity to build something here. So I ended up sticking at that company, not going back to get my MBA for 7 years. Yeah. Yeah. It changed my entire life trajectory, because I am a person that like writes stuff down, says this is the plan. It's usually long term. I don't do it as much for like today, tomorrow, or whatever, but just blew up the plan. I was like, okay, fine, I'll stick here. And if I told everyone what I was making, they're like, what are you, that doesn't make any sense. Um, but I ultimately, the experience didn't end that well at the end of the 7 years, but I think the last 2 years of it is probably the regret portion, because I could have moved on and done what I wanted to do sooner. But I learned a lot about business, good and bad, in that position at that company.
Wow. And is that what sort of prompted you to found Undock?
In many ways, yes. So the literal inception moment for Undock was when I was sitting in that office. At that time, I had two other businesses that I was running uh, in addition to that one, and the inception moment for Undock, which wasn't Undock at that time, it wasn't even a software product at that time, was when I was sitting in my office, and we just finished a project where I was getting like 150 phone calls per day. I was working like 20, 21 hours per day, and everyone needed my time when you're running, multiple businesses. They're generally small. I think the largest one at the time had 21. The smallest had like 3 or 4 or 5 actually at the time. And so I'm sitting in my office and I'm on a phone call, and I have a call on hold, which is very, very typical. Like just jumbling calls all day long. And then a line forms outside of my door. People will wait outside of my door. Like it's a thing. Like, hey, I need to get your attention. I'll just wait for you to open the door or come out or whatever. But when a line forms outside of your door, that means everyone has essentially said this is the only way they're going to get the time with me or from me is by waiting outside of my door, even though I'm on a call and I have another call holding. Like, we just have to squeeze in a moment when we can get it. And I said, this is insane. There has to be a better way for me to manage my time and not waste everyone else's time. So the first version of Undock was actually a physical product, which I found during a move recently, which I'm very excited about, called the Presence Pod. And essentially, it was going to show people in the office with a light system, whether I was on the phone, whether I was in a meeting, if I was working on a task, or if I was free to be disturbed. So they don't have to wait. I'll just put the light out there and they would know when to come. And I built 2 different prototypes for that. But before I ever went anywhere with it, I said it would be better if I can figure this out online, so anyone in the world can know when I'm available in that moment instantaneously. And, as product and startups go, a ton of iteration led us into the calendaring space. And I think it's how we came up with this innovative solution. So yes, that business and me just being so busy led to me needing to start a business that manages my calendar much better than the existing offerings out there.
Wow. You actually have a physical product with the light. My goodness.
Yeah.
Oh, uh, that is, in one sense, awesome, but also just insane about how busy you must have been. That you were like, I need to build something so they'll stop standing by my door.
It didn't make sense to me. I was like,
It did not at all. So tell me more about Undock. What is sort of the official spiel on Undock?
The official spiel is Undock helps people instantly schedule, host, and document their meetings. And the first product that we're releasing right now works inside of your email. So as you're typing to whoever it is that you're trying to have a meeting with, you just press a little button, and in your email, your schedule will pop up, and you can insert the times that work for you without having to check your calendar. We're using AI and all these other things to make smart suggestions so the times make sense. And if the other person has Undock, which everyone on the planet will soon have Undock,
Absolutely.
it'll compare not just your calendar availability, because you could both be available at 7 a.m. It doesn't mean you want to meet at 7 a.m. It takes your
Right.
availability and then your preferences and your scheduling behavior. So let's say you prefer to meet in the mornings or in the afternoons, or you don't like back-to-back meetings, or you don't want to have more than 3 hours of meetings in any day so you can actually get work done. It takes all of those things into consideration, which you do when you're looking at your calendar. You're like, I don't really want to do that day or this day. And it does the same thing for the other person's calendar, taking into account their preferences, their availability, and their scheduling behavior. And it finds the least agonizing time for all of you to meet. And that's if it's 2 people, 10 people, 50 people.
Awesome. And as someone who, as I was saying earlier, like went from I get introduced a million and one times a day,
Yeah.
I'm making introductions a million and one times a day, and it's like, okay, what's a good time for us to chat? So pre-pandemic, I was okay with, oh, I'll go back and forth 4 different emails about like trying to schedule a time for a call. And then once the pandemic hit and I was just getting inundated with calls because lots of it was like, oh my God, what's happening? What's going to do? Blah, blah, blah. And then once we sort of settled in, it was like, well, can I come on the podcast? Let me be interviewed. And I'm like, oh, how do I schedule these interviews? I was like, wait a minute. I signed up for Calendly a long time ago. Let me turn this thing back on. And so I became a believer in Calendly because it literally saved my productivity immensely. Um, and so, the reason why I'm psyched about Undock is that like even more, like one less step, I'm a super happy camper.
Yeah, I think Calendly and some of the others out there, even HubSpot and Outreach and other, I think they've tapped into part of the problem, which is if you're trading emails back and forth because neither of you knows each other's availability, then if one of you offers up your availability, then that's partly solves the problem. But the last piece is if you both just kind of offer up your availability, and just doing it in a private way. So like I don't see your calendar. I actually don't know what your true availability is. Undock just makes suggestions and recommendations
Mm-hmm.
that are highly preferred by both of you. And it's also, well, I don't want to get into the specifics of where other products fall down, but I'll say that with Undock, you are in complete control of the times that you're offering to people. So, like, I went to schedule a podcast with you, and I can see all of the times that you're available and pick whichever one works best for me. But there might have been one that works really good for you that's better than whatever time that we're recording this right now. So I think having, and then if you have 2 people, 3 people, 4 people, 5 people, 6 people, it becomes next to impossible. And there is no existing solution for that other than some type of like polling system. And there are a couple of polling applications out there, but it just takes entirely too long. So no matter how many people you're trying to meet with, in half a second, you'll know 3, 4, 10, 15 times that work for all of you. And then you can make suggestions based off of that.
Which is just brilliant. So, in the land of founderdom, and obviously also being, a Black man who's a founder in the U.S., how's that been for you, especially in the middle of a pandemic? Have you guys started to raise funds? Have you gone to the sort of friends and family round, or are you bootstrapping all the way?
It has been interesting, to say the least. My first brush with investment was I literally incorporated the company like the end of September in 2018, and then I put up like an angel list describing a little bit about the company, and an investor reached out like within a month saying, "Oh, this actually looks very interesting. I'm surprised no one has done this. Love to meet you." And at that time, I was like, "Okay, I don't know if I'm ready for investment just yet." I wasn't even planning on it. Anyways, long story short, I met with him, and he says to me, uh, "This looks very interesting. Built a lot of products, solid team. You should have no problem raising money, except for the fact that you're Black." I'm like, "Oh."
Wow, he said it to you.
He said that, and he was not a Black man, um, but he was doing it from a good place, and it's just being very direct and blunt. He even said that, I can get, I can possibly get you funds from my fund, but I don't know if they will accept you. So he's like, you're not matching all of their patterns, but you speak
Mm-hmm.
clearly and you dress nicely, so you may be able to pass. I can get you this partner meeting. I don't know if they will invest. All right. So just hearing that, I'm like, oh, okay. And then everything, like I'll give a short 30-second or a minute backstory about how I think about race relations in um, the United States. So I always have it in the back of my mind because my mother firmly implanted it in me. And by firmly implanted, I mean every 2 or 3 months, like, hey, you can't get a B. You need to be better because you're black in America. You need to be better, smarter, uh, work harder.
Twice as hard, half
Yep.
as much.
Over and over and over again. But as I'm going along, I saw very little failure, very little rejection in my life. So sometimes that starts to like fall away, and you're like, yes, I understand it's harder, but like I'm getting it done over here, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when I hear that, I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot. Like this is just not going to be that easy, and it's just a reminder. And then I started looking at the numbers for. I was again learning about venture capital. I wasn't ready to raise venture capital at that time. I was just learning about it. I'm like, less than 1% of venture capital goes to black men. I'm like looking at my fingers. I'm like, wait a minute, we are a much larger percentage of the population than that, and we start businesses almost as frequent of a rate. And then I started looking at the numbers for women. I'm like, that's just as bad. It does not make any sense. So I knew that I would have to be better, faster, bigger to get the amount of respect and, or not respect, I've been terming the benefit of the doubt that's required for an investor to make an
Mm-hmm.
investment at this stage. When you're investing in a company that has not launched a product, or even if they've launched a product, doesn't have a tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands or millions of people on their platform, depending on whether it's consumer or business application, you're betting on the founders. You're betting on their ability to figure it out. If you have no experience, if you have no connection, no relation, no history of meeting with a black man or black woman that has done these things, you're going to be skeptical just because you've never seen it before. It's not people that you rub elbows with. So I've been saying that the thing that black founders aren't getting is not that they're getting discounted for their traction or their business ideas or the business model or even the markets that they're targeting. It's that they're just not getting the benefit of the doubt that this can be a business and they are the person that can make it into a big business. So I confronted that like very, very early on because of that conversation. I'm super grateful that he just laid it out there, because I may have not looked at the numbers. I may have just carried on with the way I have been carrying on, which is saying that, yes, I hear you, mother. I'm always going to hear you. It's going to be difficult, but I'm going to persevere. I'm just going to keep doing it. Like there's nothing that's going to stop me from getting to where I need to get to. But that conversation was super helpful. Long story short, we applied to an accelerator last November, December, and we got into that accelerator. And part of the reason for getting the accelerator was for fundraising help. And again, it's like that rubber stamp of approval. It puts you into a different
Mm-hmm.
class of startup. And we were able to raise our round in essentially about 8 weeks, $1.6 million dollar round from some of the best investors on the planet. That's Lightship Capital, Bessemer Venture Partners, Lair Hippo, Alumni Ventures Group, Arlen Hamilton, and Active Capital, and some other great angels involved in the round. And it got to the point where, in the beginning, I was, for the first few weeks, just learning the ropes. I was thinking, oh, well, here we go. I'm hearing people say, oh, you're going to need to meet 50 to 75 investors to get your round raised, and it's going to take maybe 3 months or so, 3 to 6 months. I'm like, oh, okay, so I'm going to need to meet 250 to 300
Mm-hmm.
investors, and it's going to take me 6 to 9 months. That was what I was thinking. And, fortunately for us, I think the timing of the product, and the success of the product, and the success of the investors, was perfect. And I think the timing of the product, and the success of the investors, was perfect. And fortunately for us, I think the timing of the product, and the success of the investors, was perfect. And fortunately for us, I think the timing of the product, and the success of the investors, was perfect. and the learnings that I got from the accelerator, and then the rubber stamp of approval, were the hurdles that I needed to get the benefit of the doubt from some of the investors that participated in our round.
Well, one, awesome that you were able to raise actual cash and it didn't take you 11,000 years. But
Yes.
two, the structure of it all is just so ridiculous.
Yeah. Yeah.
And one of the reasons I wanted to have you on is because I thought, look, there's someone who has raised over $1 million, but the hoops that you still have to jump through versus some folks have. I work at Google, and I'm also working at Google. Here's $5 million.
Yep. That's it.
That's all you need.
Yeah.
I mean, we've seen, and those companies, guess what happened? Flame out in 2 seconds. 2 seconds after they've done it, because like there is nothing there. You're not a business person. It's like, when people ask me like, "Laura, how do you find all these really incredible event people who work for you and do all this great stuff?" I'm like, because I don't look for people who work on events. I look for people who've had other jobs who know what they're doing, because I can always teach you how to do a rental show. And the same universe should be about investing in founders. If you've actually run stuff, if you've actually managed people, you've actually had multiple jobs, guess what? That shows that you can produce pretty much anything.
Yeah, I think the mindset of which is another reason to invest in Black, Brown, and women founders, is completely different. Like the idea that I'm going to have money sitting there that I don't have to wake up every day saying, all right, we need to make this amount of money to pay these bills for this week or this month or whatever. Like that is the only construct that I have for running a business is I need to make money every single day. I need to make money every single day. The idea of running a venture-backed business is foreign to us. So that is a reason to invest in that person, because they're very, I don't know what the data says. So let me caveat that. But I think they would be less likely to squander in the spectacular fashion some of these other people have done, because they're just like, it's money, I'm just going to burn it, I'm going to set it on fire, that's what we're going to do, we're going to take over the world and burn all the money. And I don't think, at least I don't have that mindset. I want to take over the world. I want to have a product that helps people like just work when they want to work and not have to worry about scheduling and hours and all this other stuff. But I'm not going to just burn a ton of cash like doing it. Like it doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, well, I think that's the thing that's so frustrating about all of this is that, like, it's like that scene in The Dark Knight where the Joker just, lights the money on fire. He's like, I don't really care. He just wants to see the world burn. And it's like, and I feel like that oftentimes is sort of the same rule in startups where these VCs are like, well, this kid went to Stanford. He's never had a job. He's a C plus student, but he plays lacrosse with my son. It's like, here's $5 million. Like, what did you think was going to happen?
Yep.
Versus someone who is an immigrant, first generation in their family, go to college, has worked 18 jobs to get here, and you're like, well, how about you do this $50,000 accelerator program?
Yes.
And we'll take 15% of equity from your company. And I'm like, that's the most frustrating thing about all of this, where it's like, there's been a lot of things. Obviously, we're recording this in late October. We're in the heat of the election, and a certain advisor of the president yesterday or the day before said that Black people don't want to be successful. I'm paraphrasing a bit. Yep. And I was like, if you've never worked for a thing in your life, that's how you get a thought like that.
Yes.
Because anybody who has worked for some would never say to anybody, I don't think you want to be successful, because it's just not in your brain. It's not in your brain to say, oh, you've had hardship in your life, so therefore you don't want to be successful. Like it's a different and very bogus, but also very telling aspect of a person if they say stuff like that. Or like, well, you need more training. You need more advisement. Like, you will give a 19-year-old white boy $500,000 to sneeze in. Like, I saw it
from an idea written on a napkin.
He DM'd you on Twitter.
Yeah.
Like, I sit in a really interesting location because I work with tech, I work with brands, I work with VCs. I work with startups, and so I've seen so much. And one day I will write a book, but I am been consistently horrified by some of the stuff I've seen over the years. Where I'm like, you're lighting your money on fire. Like, what are you doing? To some of these VCs or these angels or these super angels that I know, and I'm like, there is no universe where that makes any sense at all.
Yeah, I think the VCs that are and angel investors that just don't see in terms of color or university or network that people spawn from, they're actually going to have better dollar for dollar returns because they're going to get better. Not that they should, but they're going to get access to deals that the other people are just overlooking. Like those deals are being completely 100% overlooked. So if you're looking and your eyes are open, you're going to find great companies that maybe not able to raise venture capital from the usual suspects. So and there's an opportunity there to when I see a handful of firms making very concentrated efforts to change that, and I know some of it from some firms is purely performative. And I have like literal stories. I'm like, I just met with you and you're saying, "Oh, I just noticed our portfolio doesn't have any black founders in it. I'm going to fix it." I'm like, no, I just met you last week. What happened?
Mhm.
Yeah,
Like I just it's um it's horrifying, and I think it's not about we just I think one of the fundamental structures needs to actually happen is sort of change the specter of who can invest. Because I think it's very nebulous in the soup of what investment actually looks like. Most people don't realize that if you make $20,000 a year or more, you can become an accredited angel investor. And there are programs like Golden Seeds. There's the Black Investor Network that Jill Johnson's on, because like those pattern matching lunatics are just not going to get a clue. And even though the returns are just so drastically better when you have founders of color and women as your founders versus just you white boys. And it's like, I always say I am a capitalist, and I'm like, my job is to make my clients money, and in turn makes me money. So if I'm telling you to do this thing, it's because it's going to make you money. And we're in this moment right now where folks are kind of paying attention, like these are doing office hours. And I'm like, but like, are you actually investing?
yeah. I think you actually just nailed something because I had a reflective moment myself. So the key is going to be getting more diverse investors to see a reasonable change. And so I mentioned that I did the research on uh, investment in minorities, and I also did the research on the hiring in tech, and it was really bad for minorities, and it was really bad for women. And I like when I was done reading one of the reports, I called my college roommate, who's also part of the company, and it's like, can you believe this? I literally had to call someone and talk like why are women, I think at that time it was something like 12% of tech roles went to women. I'm like, that does not make any sense. It does not make any sense. Like I had a heated discussion with him. Not that he was disagreeing, we were just getting so uh, upset about it. And I'm looking, I'm like, I'm getting 30 to 35% of applicants for these tech roles are women. So it's definitely not a pipeline problem for women or for people of color. It's a conscious, maybe not a conscious choice. It's the same with that pattern matching thing. So you have to put women and people of color in positions of power to affect change for both investment and then also for what the companies look like. So I said I had a moment where I had to check myself because, uh, well, first when I was hiring the engineering team, I hired uh, 3 out of 4 were people of color, and 2 out of 4 were women. So I'm like, all right, I'm doing a great job. I bring in, and it wasn't like deliberate. I was just picked the best person that was applying during that time period for the role that I needed. And then I hired a VP of engineering, and I took my hands off of the hiring process for engineers. And then my engineering team, again, not through any intentional uh, actions, became extremely homogenous. Right. So I'm like, that's not the company that I want to build. I don't want I don't want to just keep doing what everybody else is doing. So for me now, it's it's critically important not to hire um, women and people of color as employees, which we will do, but it's also to put those people in positions of power so you don't have the same issues because a person of color or a woman hiring is not going to have the same biases. And again, there's sometimes they're not intentional. Sometimes they're super like just latent subconscious bias and then pattern matching that you're doing. But the best way to affect that and to fix that is to make sure that the person doing the hiring or some of the people doing the hiring are from these underrepresented communities.
It has to be, and I think that's the key. Where it's like you have to at every role, but then those are the people who also get the stock options.
Yeah.
And because like that's how you create these generations of wealth. Like I was talking to a young woman who mentoring, and she ended up working for a startup that got stock options, and the company got bought by Amazon, and so she got Amazon stock. She's 25 years old.
Yeah. It's
Like
it's
like
crucial.
think about what that means for her in terms of how her life trajectory now changes because she now has maybe, I don't know, 5, 10,000 shares of Amazon stock. Like the ability of what she can do for herself, what she can do for others because of that. And I think that's where this starts to break because white boy's gonna white boy.
Yeah.
Like but if we can bring up a whole other generation of people and but also folks who can invest because like all those folks who work at Coca-Cola, all those folks who work at P&G, like making 200 grand, like you all can be angel investors. You can be the first check in, which means when they exit or when they get acquired, you get the first check out. And that that knowledge is going to be power and key in order for folks to be successful.
Yeah, I mean, like right now we have 5 positions of leadership, and 3 of them are either minority or women held. And I'm just going to make again, it doesn't mean I'm not going to hire, or I'm only going to hire women and minorities in these positions. I'm just going to make sure that the best person gets the job. And just from the applicant pool, statistically, at least half the time or somewhere near half the time, it should be a woman, right? Uh, Half the time, it should be a minority of some minority, like black, brown, whatever it may be. So I think as long as you're not saying, oh, it has to be this person that worked at Twitter and went to Stanford and was CTO or something at whatever company that that's the only person that I will take for this role. As long as you open yourself up to that, you're going to find the candidates and you will build a diverse team. My team is going to be incredibly diverse.
It's so very true. And I think that's the only way this gets worked. It gets solved. Looking back on all you've done right now, what do you think you'd tell 25-year-old Nash?
Uh, do what you wanted to do a little bit sooner. I honestly had like a plan, and I'm not even at the end of that plan at 25. That was like, okay, you're going to work all these jobs for a few years, and you're going to start your own businesses, and then you're going to go into real estate, and then you're going to go into the financial sector, um, and then you'll do like the whole, try to make the biggest business, whatever it was at that time. Again, early on, I didn't know I was going to make a tech startup, but I was like, all right, 40, 45, you're going to build a really big business. I don't know what it is when you're, I should have started at 25 with the end game. Like, all right, what do you want to do at 40? Well, start it now. Like, start thinking about that now. I think I didn't give myself enough credit for the speed and acceleration in which you can change your circumstances. So I would say, yes, great plan. Can you cut out all that middle stuff in there and the MBA and working for 3 years for other people and then going to this route and starting a small business here and a small business there? Because I was totally on that passive income kick for a while. It's like just set up passive income and then you can do whatever you want. Then you go into real estate, then you go into the financial sector, and then you can go try to build a really big business when you have all these streams of passive income. That was kind of my early roadmap. And if I could go back, I would just say, you have a lot of ideas. You want to build a big business someday. Why not now? And I think if I would have asked that to myself, I would have done it. Just I know my 25-year-old self was not for a lack of ambition. It was just a different plan.
Yes, and we all have those different plans. It's all good. We get there, we figure it out, we pivot, we move and grow. This is part of the game. But it's also it's super stressful. It's crazy. It's nuts, and it is what it is at this point. So navigating a pandemic, owning a startup is crazy and normal. How in the world are you managing your self-care? What are you doing for Nash?
Not a lot until recently. So I've never ever had a period where I was less physically active. I was an athlete growing up, and then I still remained physically active after college, doing like adult leagues for like soccer or softball or whatever, or even just lifting weights or whatever. Even in my own offices, like I would just run. I would run from office to office. I would run. Like that's what I would do. I have put on a pandemic 15, all right, or a quarantine 15. Sorry.
It's all good.
Yeah.
We won't judge. We shall not judge.
So I recognized it about 2 months ago, and I said I'm going to start addressing it. So I've been working on. I haven't been going to the gym, so that's an excuse. Like, oh, the gyms are closed, but that's not really an excuse. So I have been working on trying to get myself back in better shape, and now I have to force activity because I'm not like going to the office. I'm not being physically active. I wake up, go to my desk, go to sleep, go to my desk, go to sleep, go to my desk. All right, so I'm working on that, and then also recently I've been trying to take care of the external portion of my body, which I think is important as well. So like doing all these facial scrubs and treatments and all that other stuff. So that's how I'm taking care of that. And then mentally,
Good.
like, yeah, I used to do it like, but I don't know, it's just gotten away from it now. You're just, whatever.
Okay.
But mentally, I think the pandemic it's been mostly good for me in terms of like getting perspective on things. So I think mentally I'm in a good place. Like a lot of things are going poorly. A lot of things are wrong in the world. And some things that you worry about or think about just don't really matter. So
exactly.
I think I've had like a mental cleanse during the pandemic, which I think has been super helpful for me, and it's creating a ton of clarity. So I'm happy for that, and I'm generally like a super optimistic, happy, upbeat person. It takes a lot to like get me in a bad mood. So I think that the pandemic has added clarity for me, and I'm doing well. I'm doing well mentally. I just need to catch up on that physically. Yeah, so I don't have like any set routines right now. I'm just consciously aware of a lot of things. I think again, clarity is key to that. Sorry.
No, I totally get it. And it makes sense. And I'm all about the facial scrubs and because you have the time to do it now. Like I can do my skincare routine. I'm not rushing out my house.
You almost have no excuse. Like now my cabinet is full. I got like charcoal scrubs. I got these Greek oil. I have everything.
Oh,
and eye cream. I'm getting into it. I'm going to come out looking, when 2021, late 2021, when we're allowed to go back outside. I'm like, hey, looks like you didn't age during the pandemic. You may have gotten a little bit younger, fella.
See, black cracks in reverse. There you go.
That's right.
And that's awesome. And last question: do you have a give and or an ask of the audience?
I'll start with my give, and I have been doing it quite frequently since I launched the product, or at least the private version of the product. And I'm learning this to be a public person. I'm extremely private person. I've Before 2 months ago, I've never talked about myself to anyone other than like a girlfriend or something. Like even my family is like, what are you doing? So I'm learning to be more public, and it has benefits for myself, but it also has benefits for other people. And I'm always willing to help while I still can, and while I have a ton of empathy for people trying to like raise funds and have questions about starting their business. I think I've taken on at least 10 to 15 people um, and helping them with their business, like not hours and hours, but I'll take a 15-minute conversation here, 25-minute conversation. I'll review your pitch deck. I love doing that. So if you have any questions, you can do it on social, Nash Theory on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook, LinkedIn, all the platforms. I'm Nash Theory. So definitely willing to help anyone. Um, Again, I have time, but limited time, willing to help there. And then my ask is sign up for Undock at undock.com. It's free. The beautiful scheduling functionalities will always be free, and it will change things for you. And the more people that sign up, the happier the world is going to be when it comes time to schedule and host your meetings. I promise you, sign up, check undock.com. We've kind of kept it under wraps, but I think if you have a lot of meetings, or even if you just have a few meetings, but scheduling them is a nightmare, sign up for undock.com.
Awesome. I think I will put all those details in the show notes for folks to follow you and hopefully get some great startup advice on raising funds, as well as sign up for Undock. I just signed up myself. I'm looking forward to trying it out. Because I said I live and die by my calendar. And Nash, it's been such a delight having you on the show. It's always so good to talk to really incredible founders. So thank you so much for joining me on the show today.
Laura, thanks for having me. I had a wonderful time.
Awesome. And that is our show.